It was the morning of my 28th birthday, and I was standing in my childhood kitchen in an oversized t-shirt and fuzzy socks, waiting for the coffee to finish brewing, when my dad slid a manila envelope across the counter toward me. "We need to talk about the money," he said. Not happy birthday, not even a card on the counter, just the envelope. I remember the way the kitchen smelled, burnt toast and old coffee, and how the morning light came through the yellowed curtains the same way it always had. Everything familiar, everything exactly the same as it had been my entire life. And then my dad cleared his throat and said the words that split my life clean in half. "We used your savings account, the one Grandma left you." I didn't move. "Your brother needed it. He's been behind on his mortgage for 4 months and the bank was about to start foreclosure proceedings. We couldn't let that happen." I stared at the envelope. I didn't open it. I already knew, somewhere in my chest, what was inside it. "How much?" My voice didn't even sound like mine. He glanced toward the hallway, toward my mom, who I could hear moving around in the back bedroom, not coming out. "That told me everything. All of it," he said. $42,000. Let me back up. My grandmother, my dad's mom, passed away 3 years before that morning. She wasn't wealthy, not in any flashy sense. She'd worked as a bookkeeper her whole life, lived in the same house in Columbus for 40 years, clipped coupons into her 80s. But she'd been careful, disciplined in a way that none of us, honestly, ever fully appreciated until after she was gone. She left money to each of her grandchildren. My brother got $20,000. My 2 cousins got 15 each. I got $42,000, and when the estate attorney explained why, he said my grandmother had specifically noted that I was the one most likely to use it wisely. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because it matters to what comes next. I was 25 when I got that money. I was renting a room from a coworker, making $38,000 a year doing medical billing, driving a 2014 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard. I didn't go on a trip. I didn't buy new furniture. I opened a high-yield savings account, set up automatic transfers so I wouldn't be tempted, and I started quietly planning. A down payment, maybe in 3 years, maybe 4. My grandmother knew me. She knew what I'd do with it, and for 2.5 years I did exactly what she would have wanted. My brother is 5 years older than me. His name isn't important. I'll call him what I've been calling him in my head since that morning. The reason. He's always been the reason. The reason my parents skipped my college graduation to go to his sales conference. The reason my mom cried at Christmas the year I couldn't afford to fly home, but somehow found money to wire him when he said he needed it for an investment. The reason I learned, somewhere around age 12, that love in my family's was a resource with limited supply and uneven distribution. He bought a house he couldn't afford in 2021. Everyone could see it. His girlfriend, they weren't married, just living together, pushed for it. 4-bedroom house in a suburb outside Nashville. 1,700 square feet, more than 2 people need. His income was inconsistent at best. He'd been doing some kind of regional sales work that paid well some months and not at all others. I don't know all the details because nobody told me. Nobody ever tells me details. I find out about my own family's crises the way you find out about weather, when it's already on top of you. He fell behind on the mortgage sometime in late 2023. By early the following year, he was 4 months behind. And my parents, rather than telling him to sell the house, or call a HUD-approved housing counselor, or talk to his bank about a forbearance, my parents decided the solution was my savings account. My name was still on that account alongside my father's. It had been since my grandmother's estate was distributed, because the attorney had set it up that way, and I hadn't gotten around to removing him. Why would I? I trusted my father. He was my father. He withdrew every cent on a Tuesday. I didn't get an alert because the account was through a small regional bank that didn't have real-time mobile notifications set up the way the bigger banks do. I didn't know it was gone until 3 days later when I logged in to check my balance before setting up a meeting with a real estate agent. 3 days. I'd been walking around for 3 days, thinking I had $42,000 and a future I'd built myself, and the whole time the account was sitting at zero. I drove to my parents' house that Saturday. It was my birthday weekend. My mom had texted asking if I wanted to come for dinner. I thought it was because she remembered. I thought it was because they wanted to celebrate. The drive is 2 hours. I listened to a podcast about personal finance the whole way there. I remember thinking at some point on the highway that I should ask my dad whether I should put the savings into a CD or keep it liquid while I was shopping for a house. I thought we'd sit around the table and talk about it. and my mom would make her lemon cake and it would be a normal birthday. Instead, my dad slid an envelope across the kitchen counter. Inside the envelope was a handwritten IOU, not even typed. Handwritten on a piece of notebook paper in my dad's cramped cursive. We owe our daughter $42,000 to be repaid as soon as reasonably possible. As soon as reasonably possible. I stood there and read it 3 times. My mom finally came out of the hallway. She was already crying, which I had to notice meant she'd been back there bracing herself. She'd known this conversation was coming. She'd had time to prepare emotionally. I hadn't had 10 seconds. We didn't have a choice, she said. You know we couldn't let him lose his house. You had a choice, I said. You just didn't make one that included me. She reached for my hand and I stepped back, not dramatically, not to make a scene, I just stepped back. I needed to not be touched right then. Sweetheart, you're young. You can rebuild. You don't have a family depending on you yet. There it was. I don't know why I was surprised. I'd heard versions of that sentence my entire life. You're fine. You'll be fine. You're the strong one. Which, when translated, means, you're the one we can take from. Here's what I want you to understand about the next 30 minutes. Because I've thought about it a lot since then, and I think the way I reacted says everything about how 28 years of being the strong one shapes a person. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the envelope. I didn't cry, not in front of them. I asked 3 questions very quietly while I stood at that kitchen counter in my birthday clothes, with a cup of coffee I hadn't even gotten to drink yet. First question, is the account completely empty? My dad said yes. Second question, is there any other account, any joint account, anything with my name on it that I need to know about? Long pause. My mom looked at my dad looked at the counter. Your car, my mom said. We used it as collateral. I felt something shift behind my eyes. What does that mean? When we took out the line of credit to cover the rest, your brother needed more than 42 for everything. We used your car. It's paid off so it had value. We put it up as collateral. My car, my 2014 Civic that I'd paid off 18 months ago, that I'd been driving to work every single day. Third question, how much total? $60,000, my dad said very quietly so. Not 42, $60,000, my savings in my car, and apparently a line of credit I'd had no idea existed, taken out in some form that used my property as security. A line of credit I hadn't signed for. A line of credit I hadn't agreed to. I put the mug down on the counter very carefully so it didn't make a sound. Okay, I said, that was it. Just, okay. And then my dad and I will never, for the rest of my life, forget this. My dad reached back into the envelope and pulled out a second piece of paper. There's one more thing, he said. Your brother needs a co-signer on the refinancing. With his income history, the bank won't approve him a loan. If you sign this, it keeps everything together. It's just a formality. I looked at the paper. It was a co-signer agreement, 30-year mortgage refinance. My name, my income, my credit attached to my brother's debt. If he defaults, I said, this follows me. He won't default. This refinance actually lowers his payment. This is the solution. This is the solution, I repeated. My mom nodded. She had stopped crying and her face had gone into that particular set expression she gets when she has decided something is reasonable and she needs me to agree. I know that face. I grew up watching her make that face at teachers, at neighbors, at my dad when he said something she didn't like at a dinner party. We need you to do this for family, she said, after everything we've sacrificed for you. And there it was. The sentence. Every family has one. The one they hold in reserve for moments like this. The one that means stop thinking about yourself and fall in line. After everything we've sacrificed for you. I thought about my grandmother's face. I thought about the way she used to sit at her kitchen table with her ledger books, her reading glasses pushed up on her nose, tallying things up. I thought about the fact that she had left me specifically more than my brother, because she believed in what I would do with it. I picked up my purse. I'm not signing anything today, I said. My mom started talking faster. My dad put his hand on the counter between us like that would somehow stop me. Just think about it over the weekend, he said. You don't have to decide right now, we just need an answer by Monday because the bank. I'm not signing anything, I said again. Same volume, same tone. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand exactly what's at stake. I walked to the door. My mom followed me into the hallway, still talking, and I heard every word she said. Something about how I was being selfish, how my brother had a life, how this wasn't the time to be difficult, and I listened to all of it without turning around. I put on my shoes at the door, tied them, both of them. I said, I'll talk to you when I've had time to think, and I drove away. I made it about 45 minutes down the highway before I had to pull over. Not because I was too upset to drive exactly, but because I needed to think without moving. I put the car in park at a rest stop somewhere south of Dayton, and I sat there for a long time. I want to be honest about what that felt like, because I think people imagine these moments as clean, like you get wronged and you get righteously angry and you know exactly what to do and you do it. That is not what it felt like. It felt like trying to read in a spinning room, because on one hand, they had taken $60,000 of my future. They had used my car, the physical thing I drove to work every day, as collateral without telling me. They had made financial decisions in my name and then handed me an IOU written in notebook paper cursive like that was equivalent. On the other hand, these were my parents. My dad, who taught me to drive in an empty parking lot. My mom, who sat up with me the night before my state licensing exam, quizzing me from flashcards for 3 hours. These were the people who made my birthday cake every year, who kept a magnet on the refrigerator with my work schedule on it, who called me every Sunday morning. The two things existed at the same time. That's the part that doesn't make it into the clean versions of these stories. But I sat at that rest stop and I thought very clearly one thought. If I sign that paper, I will spend the next 30 years paying for choices I didn't make. And then I started making calls. First call, my bank. Not the regional one. My main checking account, which is through a national bank with actual security features. I called and told them I had reason to believe unauthorized transactions might be attempted on my account, and I wanted to add verbal verification requirements and freeze any joint access. It took 20 minutes and 2 transfers to different departments, but I got it done. Second call, the DMV. This one surprised me when I looked it up. If your car is titled in your name only, someone cannot legally use it as collateral without your signature on the loan documents. If they did it anyway, that's fraud. The DMV couldn't help me directly with that, but the woman I spoke to confirmed that my car's title was in my name only, and she gave me the number for the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Office. Third call. I called a lawyer. I didn't have one, I'd never needed one, but I found a family law attorney through a legal aid referral service who did a free 30-minute phone consultation. She asked me a series of very specific questions. She told me 2 things I needed to hear. 1. That taking money from a joint account that I co-owned was legal unless the account agreement specified otherwise, and 2. That using my car as collateral without my written consent was potentially not legal, and I should pull every document I could find. I sat in that rest stop parking lot for 2 hours making calls. Trucks went by on the highway and the wind rocked my little Civic every time one passed. My coffee from my parents' kitchen was still in the cup holder, completely cold. When I finally pulled back onto the highway, I felt different. Not better, exactly, but steady, like I had found the floor. The calls started that evening, my mom 3 times, my dad once, my brother for the first time in 4 months, twice. I let them all go to voicemail. The texts came in waves. My mom's were emotional. My dad's were practical, almost businesslike, explaining timelines and bank deadlines and what would happen if the refinancing fell through. My brothers were, and I'm going to be honest here, my brothers were angry. Not apologetic, not grateful, angry. As if I had done something to him by not immediately agreeing to guarantee his debt with my financial future. His last text that night said, "I guess I know where I stand with you." I put my phone face down on my kitchen table and I left it there. I made dinner, pasta with whatever I had in the cabinet. It was my birthday and I made myself plain pasta and I ate it standing at the kitchen counter because I didn't feel like sitting down at a table alone, and that was okay. That was fine. I had survived a great many birthdays in my life and I would survive this one too. The following Monday, I drove to the regional bank where my grandmother's money had been. I brought the IOU, I brought my ID, I brought the account records I'd printed from online showing the single withdrawal of $42,000, made on a Tuesday morning by the other account holder. I spoke with a branch manager named, I'm not going to say his name, but he was kind. He was genuinely kind in a way that caught me off guard, and I had to work very hard not to cry in his office. He confirmed everything. The withdrawal was made by my father, who was listed as a co-owner of the account. Under the account terms, either co-owner could withdraw the full balance without the other's consent. He said gently that there was nothing the bank could do. I nodded. I had already known that. The lawyer had told me as much. I just needed to hear it from a human being in a real building so I could close that door and move to the next one. I asked him what I should do. Not professionally, just as a person. He looked at me for a moment and then he said, "Close any accounts that have anyone else's name on them today." I did. The situation with my car turned out to be more complicated than I initially understood, and I want to explain it accurately because I've seen people ask about this kind of thing and get wrong answers. My dad had not, as it turned out, used my car as traditional collateral in the way I'd initially imagined, like signing over a title. What he had done was list my vehicle as an asset on a personal loan application to boost his own creditworthiness. The car was still in my name, I still had the title, but his loan application had included my car's estimated value as a household asset, which was misleading at best. My attorney, the one I eventually hired properly, not just the free consultation, told me that this was a gray area. It wasn't outright fraud in the clearest sense, but it was potentially actionable misrepresentation, depending on how the loan documents were structured. She recommended I send a certified letter to the lending institution, informing them that I was not a co-applicant, and that my vehicle had been listed without my knowledge or consent. I sent the letter. I don't know exactly what happened after that. I don't know whether the lender flagged it, whether it affected my brother's loan terms, whether my dad had any consequences from it. I made my record. I protected myself. That's all I could control. I did not speak to my parents for 6 weeks, not because I planned 6 weeks, I didn't set a timer and decide. I just didn't answer. And then a week went by, and then another, and somewhere in the middle of the third week I realized that I wasn't actively choosing silence anymore, so much as I was choosing peace. The quiet of not waiting for the next thing to need something from me. The rest of not calculating what I might lose next. My mom eventually sent a card in the mail, an actual card, not a text. It had flowers on the front and inside she'd written 3 paragraphs in her loopy handwriting. She said she was sorry for the way things were handled. She didn't say they shouldn't have taken the money. She didn't say my brother should have called me himself. She said she was sorry for the way things were handled, which is the kind of apology that acknowledges an event without acknowledging a wrong. I kept the card. I don't know why. It's in a drawer in my kitchen. My brother never apologized. He sent one more text about 3 weeks after everything happened, asking if I'd calmed down enough to be reasonable. I did not respond to that text. I don't intend to. Here's what I want to tell you, and I means you, specifically whoever is listening to this, about what came after. I did not get my $42,000 back. I want to be clear about that because I don't want to give you a story with a clean financial resolution when the truth is messier than that. The IOU exists. My parents intend to repay me. I have not seen a dime of it yet, and I have come to terms with the possibility that I might not, or that I might get it back slowly over years in amounts that don't account for what that money would have grown into if it had been left alone. What I got back instead was something harder to quantify. I moved, not to run away. I want to be clear about that too, because there's a version of this story where the lesson is cut everyone off and start over, and that's not actually the lesson. I moved because I had already been planning to move. I found a studio apartment in a neighborhood I liked, in a city that felt like mine for the first time, and I paid my first and last month's rent with money I earned, and I put my name on the lease by myself and nobody else had access to anything. My savings are not what they were. They are, if I'm being honest, somewhere around $8,000 right now, which is so far from where I was that sometimes I have to stop myself from doing the math. But they are mine. Entirely mine. Nobody else's name on the account, nobody else's name on my car title, nobody else's access to the things I'm building. I talk to my parents now. Not the way we used to, not the Sunday morning calls, not the standing birthday dinners, but I talk to them. My mom called me on a Thursday night in November, and she cried, a real cry, not the bracing myself cry from the hallway that morning, and she said that she had spent a lot of time thinking about what it would feel like to be me in that kitchen. I let her talk. I didn't tell her whether that was enough. I don't know yet if it is. What I know is this. I spent 28 years being the one who would be fine. The one who was strong enough to carry extra weight. The one whose future was flexible because I hadn't built it yet. Always hadn't built it yet, no matter how carefully I laid every brick. I am not angry anymore. I want to be clear about that too because I think people expect me to be and I understand why. But anger is exhausting and I have things to do. I have $8,000 in an account with only my name on it, and a job I'm good at, and a studio apartment with windows that get morning light. And I have my grandmother's voice somewhere in the back of my head saying you're the one most likely to use it wisely. And I intend to prove her right. Even if I have to start over, even if starting over takes everything I have. I packed slowly, I moved quietly. And by the time anyone realized what I'd actually walked away from, not just the kitchen, not just the birthday morning, but the whole shape of who I'd agreed to be in that family, I was already somewhere else entirely. And that somewhere else felt, for the first time in a very long time, like it was mine.